All right, perfect. Now, the first thing that I want to discuss is already on our screen. It's the dollar. And it's quite a big topic, of course, because that will tell us a lot on how this trading week will develop and if we will have a very nice trading week or if we need to take a step back again. Now, one thing that we saw right here is a big rejection lower. A big rejection lower. I believe it was news as well that caused that big rejection lower right there. I didn't necessarily expect it at that moment in time, but we do have it. Now, it reminds me a little bit of the previous price action that we had last week, actually, where we had this scenario right here, where we were already climbing higher right there, becoming a bit bullish, creating some nice order flow, and all of a sudden, with news right there, a big rejection lower to then continue higher again. Now, will we continue higher again? Well, there is a difference between this candle and the current candle that we have right here, where this candle does not reject higher right there again. So the chances are that we might get a 1 hour value gap going against us right there. And that's something we have to take into account. But before we go over that, and that's essentially waiting to see what we want to do with this low. If we now create that 1 hour value gap, continue lower off it, then we can argue, okay, this daily value gap is arguably not that strong. And we might want to look at lower price even. But before we go over that, I also want to discuss why in the forecast I wanted to wait for a 4 hour fair value gap instead. And the reason for that is because of this daily fair value gap, it now is a very small daily fair value gap. The rejection that we had very late during the day right there, so the retracement that we created, was not necessarily a very good sign that we still wanted to continue higher, in my opinion. As in, it was a little bit suspicious. So here we do create that 4 hour fair value gap sitting right there, which we can then eventually continue higher off of, and we fail to follow through right now. So again, I also want to wait for a new 4 hour value gap, or at least having 1 hour for value gaps right here, confirm that order flow again to continue higher off of. Now this will also be seen on some of the Forex majors, and that is definitely something interesting to take a look at as well. All right, let's look at the indices. Russell right here. Again, Russell for me is just not that clear, and overall the indices to me are not that clear. But if I had to force an ID, then it would be this 4 hour value gap, seeing if we want to continue higher off of that, which you can see with a large sweep. Wow, that's a very big wick. Above that fake top right there, can we create unusual context to potentially continue lower? Could also be quite interesting. But let's wait and see what I want to do. ES. ES and both ES and NASDAQ right here are not interesting to me. Again, they're simply at all-time highs. I do not want to trade all-time highs. If I do want to trade them, then at least I want to wait for a daily value gap that we can potentially continue higher off of, which is not today. So here I just simply want to wait and not do anything. YM. All right. YM, we also have this 4 hour value gap. We already disrespect this earlier 4 hour value gap right there as well. Again, to me, it's not that interesting right here. I do think we can potentially look at higher prices, but I would want to wait for a little bit more confirmation. Either 1 hour value gaps going higher today, or simply wait for the daily value gap tomorrow, right there. DAX. So DAX, we have this daily value gap. Now, with DAX, it's quite important to understand the correlation between the other indices, because the other indices currently are consolidating. That means that we have, let's say we have 3 lines right there. And the bottom line right here is DAX will want to continue lower. So DAX is weak. Then we have ES, NASDAQ, and YM, etc. The other indices, they are currently at this level because they are consolidating right there. But if ES, NASDAQ, etc. want to continue higher, want to push higher, they will move up a line right there, whilst DAX will always stay at this line. Now, why is this important? Because these lines are sort of the strength, as in if DAX is here at the bottom and wants to push lower, and ES and NASDAQ want to move up to this line and want to push higher, then that creates a strong opposing pull to the other side for DAX as well. Whereas if we stay in a consolidation for the other indices, there's less of a strong pull on the other indices to continue higher. So DAX will have less force against it, essentially. Less bearish hands. Now, right here, or less bullish hands, excuse me. So right here, it's really dependent what are the other indices going to do, not necessarily what DAX is going to do right here. So on DAX, what do we see? We already had a beautiful 1 hour sharp turn, by the way, absolutely beautiful. Then on the 15-minute, what do we have? We have these 15-minute fair value gaps to continue lower off of. And again, by itself, it's a beautiful trade ID. If we do it in combination with the other indices, where the other indices might be bullish, it becomes a little bit tricky. But if we only look at DAX, it is definitely a really good trade ID right here. And it definitely looks quite interesting as well. So we'll keep an eye on it. Let's keep an eye on it right here. All right, Australian dollar, US dollar. This daily value gap that we have right there. Again, off of any confirmation on Forex majors, just purely because of the dollar, I want to see 4 hour value gaps going lower first. And then get the good confirmation again. So here we do not get a 4 hour confirmation, 4 hour value gap lower first. So there's also no confirmation for me. Perfect. Euro US dollar, never get a 4 hour value gap lower. Perfect, no confirmation, don't want to do anything. GU, what do we have? GU, we had this daily value gap as well, but we never get the 4 hour value gap lower. And as well, GU, it's also running into that weekly value gap, right? So this is simply said a 50-50 area right here, because we're shorting into a weekly value gap, which is not the highest probability thing to do. So this is also quite 50-50 for me. Don't like it. New Zealand dollar, US dollar, also no 4 hour value gap. So again, even though the dollar had that 4 hour value gap higher, in my opinion, there wasn't really any opportunity on the Forex majors right there. Not at least not high probability. We have a 4 hour value gap on US dollar, Canadian dollar, but that's not very high probability in my opinion, because the lag lower right there is still in the way overall. As in, the lag lower is bigger than what we see on the lag higher right there. It's still a consolidation in my opinion. US dollar CHF, let's see. Now, we do not get any kinds of sweep currently. We just continue lower. So let's wait and see what we want to do right here. But it's just not that interesting right now. US dollar JPY. All right, what did we have? On the 1 hour, we had to push higher right there, which is actually beautiful, because that's also what I wanted to see. But afterwards, we failed to follow through, and we do not even reach these highs right here. Okay, well, this right here is a little bit of a shame, and don't necessarily like this anymore. But if we do still want to continue higher, then again, extra confirmation. It's constantly extra confirmation if we do not do the perfect thing. Silver, consolidating. Still consolidating. Gold as well, consolidating right here. And to me, it's not interesting at this moment in time. Bitcoin, still, you won't believe it, as well, consolidating. Don't like it. Now let's see what we are working with on this side right here, with this daily value gap. If we can do something with that, if we can finally create some other value gap as well. But in the meantime, it's just really not that interesting. Crude oil, perfect. We have arrived at the high probability conditions. Now, here it's become a question of how far can we retrace right now, which is very interesting to study as well, which we can take a look at in this live session. We have a daily value gap in the making right there. We are very close to the daily drawn liquidity right there. Ah, nice. We can add text actually. All right. Then on the 4 hour, we have a few 4 hour value gaps right there, which we can potentially continue higher off of. Now, we do not continue higher off the first one. Okay. Potentially, we did not have the volatility at that moment in time. So we have a lower sting into a value gap right there to then potentially continue higher. The 2 candle rejection currently is very nice. It looks very good at this moment in time. So this rejection is quite large right there. Can we come back into the fair value area right there? Yes, we can. But do we want to see it, and would we place another trade? In my opinion, no, not necessarily. And what I mean by that is, if we do make this retracement happen right here, I do believe we are still bullish, as in that doesn't change it. But I do believe when we do make that retracement, that we might see more of a consolidation again, like we also saw last week actually with, where was it exactly? I'm going too far here. It was this consolidation actually right there. And we might consolidate until we then start to push higher again. So here, I already think that we can push higher at this moment in time, where we currently are. So do we have anything that we can currently continue higher off of? No. 50-minute, no. 1 hour, no. So if we do get proper confirmation right there, we might sweep a few lows. We might even consolidate here without taking out that low. to then get the good confirmation, then I do believe we can deliver towards that draw on liquidity sitting right there. Again, does look nice. Just a little bit of a shame of the lower time right here. So let's wait and see what it wants to do. All right, Bank Nifty. All right, we finally have some movement, finally. So this is exactly what I was waiting for as well. And again, usually when we tend to consolidate, it tends to be consolidation and then just a movement towards the draw on liquidity again, the initial draw on liquidity that we had. So this was the initial draw on liquidity that we had right there. We consolidate, we expect, okay, can we run a high right there to then continue higher? That's what we get. Perfect. Can we now find fair value gaps to continue higher off of? Ideally, 4-hour value gap to push higher right there even, to then continue towards that draw on liquidity right there, which is again a new all-time high. All right, let's quickly update as well the interest list, New Zealand dollar JPY. Let's see, we don't follow through, and this was a little bit of my suspicion as well, as in the main reason why I had that suspicion is because we never really followed through. Before that, and we were always in this weird consolidation. So just this 4-hour value gap right there higher, without having evidence that we are now running a high, is not necessarily enough in my opinion. I would want more confirmation. All right, Australian dollar CHF. Let's see. Ooh, perfect. Sting into the daily value gap right there. It's a shame we already missed this right here. This low as a target. What do we have on the lower time frame? Oh, wow. That's very nice, actually. Very nice. I completely missed that right there. We're doing a London session. I'm sleeping. Now, right here, we delivered already towards that low, which is a bit of a shame right there. So I do not want to get involved again. I would want to wait. But this was beautiful delirium-wise right here to continue lower. All right, perfect. Euro US dollar. Still waiting, right? Still waiting to see what will happen. Again, we could even sweep these highs right there to then get the rejection lower because it is looking like a fake top. All right, New Zealand dollar, US dollar, also waiting. Euro Canadian dollar. So since we did not create that daily value gap, it's also not that interesting to me, in my opinion. And I just don't really want to look at it. Waiting list. Canadian dollar CHF. We just simply push lower. But again, do we have somewhat of a clear premium to continue lower from? Not really at this moment in time. All right, Euro CHF. Let's see. Another sting into the daily value gap. Already continue lower as well. Okay. We can reach for these next targets, which is this next weekly value gap as well. On the 4-hour, that could be quite interesting. I don't think we would have to wait for a daily value gap right there, simply because the draw on liquidity is quite close. GP Canadian dollar. Let's see. Daily value gap right there, which we have not reached into yet. This is still very 50-50 to me. GP JPY. All right. Do not follow through with the 4-hour value gap right there. Still consolidating in my opinion. Don't want to do anything right here. All right, perfect. Let's take a look. What are we dealing with? Can I get an insight on GJ from you? This looks like kind of 50-50. Yeah, it's very 50-50. Yeah, it's quite interesting because I do think we can still look to continue higher overall. As in, we do not get the proper confirmation to continue lower. We do not get good confirmation or flow, clear, sweep the highs to then continue lower. So I do think we can overall be bullish right here. But if we want to be bullish, again, I also want good confirmation on the bullish side right here, which we do not get currently. But if we do get that, I do think it can be interesting for higher prices, reaching this high eventually. What are your thoughts on the resistance in form of the daily value gap that we ran into on DAX? Let's see. Let's see. This one right there. Yeah, it's always a little bit tricky. And it's very similar to, which one was it? Australian dollar CHF, I believe. Right here. Where we also ran into daily value gap as resistance right there. Now, it's not necessarily something that I would worry about when we do want to look for higher prices. It's just for me to know, okay, we can create a retracement off of that, if that makes sense. Now, if we do want to continue lower, then that does take into account I do want really good confirmation if we do want to continue lower right there, since we do reject somewhat successfully off the daily value gap, if that makes sense. So good confirmation in the form of potentially even a 4-hour value gap lower instead of your normal confirmation. That's what I would like to see. Is it better for DAX let's see, is it better to wait for DAX to wait for the 4-hour value gap is first clearly disrespected, price wicked for value gap on 4-hour and then enter, or the 50-minute value gap from the 1-hour value gap you have shown us is already high probability? Let's see. No, I would like to wait for more confirmation. And well, we don't necessarily have to wait for this fully to be disrespected. So it really depends on your initial trading plan. As in, if you usually enter on ST plus RE, then I would also advise just simply enter with a normal ST plus RE. Just know if you need more confirmation. Now, if we need more confirmation right here, then this 4-hour value gap right there, as soon as it fails to follow through, and we take out this low right there, and we start running that low, that for me is already disrespected. So here, do we even get confirmation before that? I don't believe so. So we already get confirmation before the 4-hour value gap is actually disrespected right there. So here, well, we could say purely, I don't think we need more confirmation. Let me put this straight, or let me put this very clear. I don't think we need more confirmation because we have a 4-hour value gap going against us right there. I think we need more confirmation because of the other indices right there and because of, for example, this daily value gap right there. Now, we get this right here, this 1-hour value gap, but I don't think that would be an entry because you would take it before 3 a.m. And if you're trading DAX, I don't think that would be a good entry. And then afterwards, we get the right confirmation. And here, I would just want more confirmation just because of the fact of the other indices, if that makes sense. Do you require news for Thank God Friday? I believe in the previous trading plan, I did require news for Thank God it's Friday, but I would have to see how it plays out. I can see why and why not as well. But I would say start off without news for Thank God Friday and afterwards see if it really affects the market overall. What entry would you have taken on Australian dollar CHF? It most likely would have been an entry based on it just running. As in here on the 50-minute, if we take a look, let's see. What's a daily value gap? That makes it quite difficult right there. So on the 1 hour, the entry is quite difficult. I say it's a nice delivery, but looking at it right here, the entry is quite difficult because we're already falling heavily. So even if we enter, for example, like this, which in hindsight is quite an interesting entry, that's not an entry. I can calmly say that's not an entry I would take. Now right here on the 1 hour, if we take a look, then the only real thing that I can see is we have a 1 hour big sharp turn right there. So this right here, closing the value gap essentially, entering on third candle creation, covering where we do not expect a retracement. So that can even be the fair value gap high right there to then targeting lower. That's the only real entry that I could see right there. And then currently being break even, expecting it to run that low to then continue lower as well, going for a 1 to 2 RR. That's really the only entry I can see. But that, again, that's quite forced. I say it was quite a nice delivery, but somehow in my mind, I had that it was a 4 hour value gap, which is not the case. That's also why I went into the 5 minute. But it's a daily value gap, so it's a little bit different. Why do you require 4 hour value gap for the Forex majors? I do not understand why. Because the retracement. If you struggle with understanding why I require more confirmation, then please go ahead and watch the more confirmation video on the spring enrollments. But to sum that up is essentially because we have bullish arguments created right here. If we continue higher right here, then we have disrespected right now the 4 hour value gap right there. Well, it all starts with the dollar, right? We are now disrespecting this 4 hour value area right there, disrespecting the 4 hour value gap. We create bullish 4 hour value gaps right there as well, continuing higher. So at this moment in time, the least minimum confirmation that we want to have is a 4 hour value gap right there, in my opinion. Anything below that is just not enough. Now, if we take a look at the dollar right here, And the dollar, because it was such a small daily value gap, and we all of a sudden had such a big retracement late during the day, not respecting this 4-hour value gap, not respecting the fair value area initially, creating also fair value gaps going against us, then here is the same thing. I want more confirmation. I want it to fully disrespect everything. So we get the more confirmation right there on the dollar, but we never get it on Australian dollar US dollar, which Australian dollar New Zealand dollar, Australian dollar US dollar on the daily time frame. This is already not a good entry. As in, why would this daily value gap all of a sudden follow through? Just because the dollar right there has been showing signs that we might want to continue higher. But even this right there is not the highest probability because we have a weird retracement right there. So this, just purely going to the lower time frame on Australian dollar, US dollar, that's not a good trade. And again, I highly recommend them watching the more confirmation video because, well, more confirmation, you're going to need it a lot of times. And your US dollar, same thing. We failed to create daily value gap. More confirmation is required. GU, more confirmation because we have a weekly value gap going against us right there. It's 50-50. New Zealand dollar, US dollar right there. We never sting into the daily value gap. So it's quite straightforward. US dollar, Canadian dollar has been consolidating for a long period of time. So not interested in that. US dollar CHF was never interesting. US dollar JPY didn't follow through. So in my opinion, there's zero opportunities on the Forex majors at that moment in time. Potentially flow. Again, I'm talking from a one-sided perspective, which is usually filtering process. Potentially flow. That could have been an opportunity. We think about US dollar JPY. Currently not that interesting. And if we do want to continue higher, I would like to wait for either 1 hour or 4 hour value gaps going higher. I do not want to look at shorts, but if we do want to look for higher price, again, I would want more confirmation. 4 hour value gap, 1 hour value gap higher to look at a clear discount rate again. Could be interesting eventually, but let's see. Here the market created a 4 hour sharp turn. Let's open it. All right. Here the market created a 4 hour sharp turn from the daily value gap and last resistance was above. From there, market took a rejection and went down. My question is whether to take a major pair entry until all the resistances are overtaken on the dollar, because sometimes there's a good setup in a major pair, but because of such thing, everything is a mess up. Well, the thing is with the dollar, I want the dollar, as in when the dollar creates that 4 hour value gap to continue higher off of right there on the daily value gap, I know the dollar can continue higher. So that's the only thing that I need to have. Whether the dollar has took any rejections of resistance, doesn't really matter to me. But then I want to see also the good confirmation, the same 4 hour value gaps on the Forex majors, which we never had. So even though the dollar was ready, yes, we never got confirmation on major pairs, if that makes sense. So in my opinion, you don't necessarily need to wait for the resistance to be taken out right there. But we do need to wait for the confirmation on the major pairs, because even though the dollar has the confirmation, we need sort of confirmation on both. And the confirmation that I would want on the dollar is simply, can it continue higher at this moment in time? So does it have a discount rate that it can continue higher from on the higher time frame? So 4 hour, daily, etc. If that's the case, perfect. Then I just want to see my normal confirmation on the Euro US dollar. So then I treat it as a standalone Euro US dollar, if that makes sense. Canadian dollar CHF, we are forming 4 hour value gap with odd. Can we look at it for short? Let's see. Canadian dollar CHF. Canadian dollar CHF. Well, we are running into this monthly value gap right there. On the weekly, we don't really have a lot of resistance. What is the next draw on liquidity? On the daily, let's see. Next draw on liquidity is this order block right there. Afterwards, it's these swing lows right here as well. So can we wait for a 4 hour overlapping defense to continue lower off of? No, in my opinion. I don't think that's a very good trade ID. And the reason why I don't think that's a very good trade ID, if we currently create that retracement right here, it wouldn't make sense from the fact that we are already very close to next drawn liquidity. If we create this retracement from that drawn liquidity, from the resistance, back towards the overlapping defense to then continue lower, that's not a good trade idea because we're running into a lot of resistance, which might have a very, which might have a very aggressive push higher right there. So I would want more confirmation. And then I would rather wait for a daily fair value gap right here, which is potentially getting created off that resistance to then continue lower off of. So since we don't necessarily have, well, the only thing here is if this is a consolidation, we have this 4-hour fair value gap right here, then this trade is a good trade. But other than that, I would want to wait for a daily fair value gap right there. What do you think of 4-hour stick entry on crude oil? Let's see. Yeah, in my opinion, that's a good entry. In my opinion, that's a good entry right there. 4-hour stick entry. That's a good entry. I do like that. Keep in mind where the entry then is. Because right here, I say it's a good entry just purely on the entry confirmation that we have. If we now take into account the RR that we have, that becomes quite difficult because, again, it's not quite difficult, but it's a little bit lower probability in my opinion. And the reason for that is because now we need it to run this high right there. It can't have a deep retracement after we run this high. Now, that's not necessarily difficult because then we just understand, okay, we need to go break even quite early right there. Because if we get this to then continue higher, that could also happen, right? So that's the only thing to take into account. 15 minutes fair value gap right there in the making in 3 minutes. Let's keep an eye on that as well. Perfect, SKJ, perfect. Let's see, just wanted to make sure. On GBP Canadian dollar, you're waiting for price to react from bearish daily fair value gap. What about the reaction from the bullish daily fair value gap and order block? Shouldn't that be considered first since the overall trend is bullish? Let's see. Let's see, what are we doing? Yeah, you're right. As in, I'm taking this into account. I'm taking this. I'm mainly looking at that fair value gap. And the reason why I'm looking at that fair value gap is to see if we are disrespecting it. So that's my main concern. As in, I do think as well, like you mentioned as well, there is no real reason. Just because we have a bearish daily fair value gap right there, I don't think it's necessarily a very good reason currently to all of a sudden become very bearish. So if we want to continue higher, I still want to see a rejection potentially off that to then continue higher off that, if that makes sense. But at this moment in time, we are just simply very 50-50. It's not very clear on what we want to do right here. Because if we respect the daily value gap, we might even see delivery lower into one of these fair value gaps right here. On Australian dollar CHF, 4-hour stick. Australian dollar CHF 4-hour stick. Let's see. Well, if it was an early stick right there, it would have been all right. This is still, at this moment in time, it's not necessarily a bad stick entry, but now the coverage becomes quite difficult. And that's sort of the hard part right here. Because if it was this entry, then, well, we could still deal with it. As in right here, 1 to 2, I wouldn't really mind it. We would also be break even at this moment in time. That's perfect. But once we now take out this low, then I would argue this stick entry is already a little bit too late. Where, let's see if we can have a clear draw liquidity on the 4-hour. We already ran into these lows right here, which is arguably why we're seeing the rejection right now, or the order block, I mean. That is the next target. Then it would all of a sudden turn into, well, this turns into almost a position trade right here, where be prepared to hold this for a very long period of time, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not really my thing, if that makes sense. So I don't tend to hold positions for that long right there with that big of a stop loss, etc. Potentially holding for days and even a week right here wouldn't be too crazy. So that's the only thing that I do not necessarily like right here. So if we're talking about the earlier stick entry, yeah, that's a nice entry right there. So we have a bank holiday for US dollar tomorrow. Would this prevent you from looking at any cross which have GP CPI supporting them? I don't really know whether lack of US dollar volatility will ruin other currencies. That's a good question. And I wouldn't worry about that too much. Again, it really depends on the context. We have to see what happens tomorrow as well. And see if we truly have no volatility at all in the crosses. If that happens, which will again be seen by two candle rejections failing, etc., things like that, then don't trade it. But other than that, I would still want to follow just the news that we have for that particular day. So if we have GDP CPI afterwards, could still be interesting in my opinion. Euro JPY. Let's see. The only thing I don't like about Euro JPY is, well, there's a lot of things that I don't like about Euro JPY right here. But to start off with, to keep it quite simple right here, is we have this retracement into this weekly VI gap, which is already a little bit suspicious because we were already looking to continue higher right there. So the retracement makes it a little bit suspicious. Now the retracement is, again, can then be argued, okay, if it's a retracement into a breakaway gap, that usually tends to lead to a consolidation. So here we do get a consolidation as well. We do not get the good confirmation. Now, can we continue higher off of this low right there, of that sweep? That could be quite interesting. But here, again, I do not think we have very good confirmation just yet, as in we're still struggling in that bigger consolidation. We have a 4-hour VI gap right there, which fails to follow through with a new 4-hour VI gap right there. So, in my opinion, unless we create a daily VI gap right here to continue higher off of, I'm not really interested in it. And it's just a bigger consolidation, in my opinion. On Nasdaq, we sweep the previous day low to create a 4-hour VI gap. And now we have a bearish 50-minute VI gap. Would you look at shorts from now from the flow trading plan perspective? Let's see. So we have on Nasdaq, we sweep the previous day low, previous day high, I think, right? That one, previous day high. Then on the 4-hour, we failed to create the 4-hour VI gap. We do not have a sweep on my, maybe it's a contract thing. Could be. Anyway, on the 1 hour, 50 minutes, we have gaps right here. Yeah, to me, this would not necessarily be a very good trade ID. And the main reason for that is because we're at an all-time high and we only have a 15-minute shift, essentially, right now, looking at shorts. Whilst if we look at the daily candles, we have just been extremely bullish. So the odds that we are going to get away with at least a break even, that's very low probability in my opinion. So could it play out? Yes, 100% for sure. But it is very low probability in my opinion right here to instantly look at shorts off of this fair value gap right there. It's like calling a top, which I would heavily advise against because lost a lot of money on that. But they are the easier trades to spot. Now, right here, if we do want to continue higher, then the disrespect of this to continue higher could be quite interesting. If we want to continue lower and we do actually want to have the confirmation, etc., to continue lower, then it could be quite interesting to follow through of this 15-minute VI gap and get a higher time frame for VI gaps as well, supporting the ID. So to get somewhat of a trend, higher trend going right here to continue lower. That could be quite interesting. Hiro, can you look at New Zealand dollar, US dollar today? I missed a short on during London. Was wondering if it was okay delirium entry. Well, for delirium, I wouldn't see where your entry was. As in, the daily VI gap was right there. So which one is the higher time PD rate that you're trading off of? That's my main question. As in, I don't think you necessarily missed an entry right here, since there also wasn't a higher time PD rate to start off with. So there's no delirium. If that makes sense. If we're talking about a order flow entry, as in 1 hour to continue lower, then yes, we could argue right here we have this fair value gap right there. And we also have this fair value area actually right there, which is the breaker. Then off of that we can continue lower, where we have 50-minute sharp turn right there. Right here. and to then continue lower at that moment in time. And the 1 minute even. Do we have an earlier entry on the 1 minute? Very ugly delivery, but eventually we continue lower right there. Yes, so that would be it, right? Delirium wise, that's an well, it's not necessarily delirium because you're going to the 1 hour, but hybrid wise, that's an okay entry since we're making use of the 1 minute and below. So flow trading plan, we could argue that's an okay entry for sure, for sure. I was thinking of the first 4 hour candle. What do you think of that? Yeah, that's okay. That's okay on crude oil. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, the rejection right there, that would do it for me. As in, that's okay. Right there. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let's see where the 1-2 is then. But that 1-2 is actually quite close right there. That's all right. And arguably, we would already be break even right now. So that's also quite nice. What do we do? We have the 50-minute Vivek right there. Can we continue higher off it, or are we going to disrespect it? Let's see. Yeah, Australian Siege F 50-minute delivery was such a shame, such a used ST and such a late high time delivery on point, though at least, yeah, it was. Yeah, one of those cases where the drawn liquidity was so clear. When we eventually delivered lower right there, but the entry just, yeah, quite difficult. And it's also because the overall context is quite small, right? Because if the context was a bit lower, etc., it would have been a whole different story. And we do not necessarily have a very clear target again towards the left. So, yeah, those things add up. Makes it a little bit more difficult right there. Could argue that's the closest drawn liquidity that we have right there. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. Exactly. Last Friday, ES stepped into a daily volume while Nasdaq rejected less than 2 points away. Does behavior like that qualify ES as an easy pair to trade for inexperienced traders? You will see it happen on, sometimes it happens on Nasdaq, sometimes it happens on ES. One thing you can do is if you want to trade or you're looking at both ES and Nasdaq and you're looking at daily volume gaps both, then you can simply say, okay, I'm going to trade either one, which as an earlier sting into the daily volume gap right there. Or stick to one. So if you're trading a flow trading plan, then I would advise stick to one. Because then you'll still see and you'll get used to it eventually, if that makes sense. You'll get used to Nasdaq here already continuing higher, and you'll see already fair value gaps higher here, and you'll think, I do not really think this has a good chance to still come back lower to then continue higher. So you'll get used to it. But yeah, there's not necessarily one more friendlier to inexperienced traders, I would argue. Unless some of the flow traders as well would disagree with me. ES could be a little bit friendlier because it tends to be a bit less volatile. Nasdaq can be very crazy. Let's see. This week I caught myself chasing private but found a small entry in low time. I would call it high probability due to entry not being the cleanest. But I wouldn't say intuition took place in a way due to high time resistance was there. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice, Leo. I like that. I like that. SMT. Zeus, man. You should get your support role taken just for saying that. Oh, I'm joking. The amount of SMT that we had right here on this Australian dollar US dollar consolidation. Good luck. Let's see. All right, perfect. Let's take a look at crude oil again. On the 50 minute. Perfect sting into it. Let's go into the lower time frame, into the 1 minute and the 5 minute. Ooh, beautiful rejection currently. Beautiful rejection currently. Makes me want to hop back into futures. This is absolutely beautiful right now. And let's take a look. There closes. Realistic stop loss placement is already at the low of this fair value gap. Again, if it retracement even, that is already quite a big retracement right here. So even this, that's not something I would necessarily want to see if we still want to continue higher. And let's see. The RR is almost perfectly at the high as well. That's really nice. It's really nice. Now, where's the high towards the left right here? Because that's something we do have to take into account right here. That we monitor, that we run this high and we don't sweep it. And the reason why that is so important, because if we come above this high right here and we all of a sudden start doing weird price action like this, yeah, that's just a shame. And we might get taken out right here because the entry is quite high. We might get taken out to then continue higher. Let's keep an eye on it if we want to deliver right here. One minute fair value gaps, 1 minute fair value area right there as well. Wow. Yeah, this is something you won't really get on Forex right here. And this is something you will get on futures. Just the accuracy is there. And that's beautiful about futures. You don't really have that on Forex. It's quite rare. All right, then as soon as we reach the high, we need to again monitor what it's going to do. So ideally we see it, of course, running higher immediately right there towards the next high. Don't have resistance anymore or anything. So this is essentially no resistance. We have new support ID. So if it does not happen, that no resistance, and we know it should have no resistance, then as soon as it does not happen, be very wary of that. Where this trade, if this was a trade you took, or even later on, that's already a break even. That's already a break even right there. And the funny thing about the fair value area like this is because the fair value area right here is also valid on a 1 minute time frame, right? This is also a valid fair value area on the 1 minute time frame. But the thing is, the gaps between the time frames will become bigger and bigger and bigger, and they start off quite small. So the 1 minute fair value area will eventually turn into a 5 minute fair value area right there with a 5 minute fair value gap, because it's only a 5 minute time difference. Then it's a 10 minute time difference between the 50 minute. So there's more time to create a 50 minute fair value area, fair value gap with it. Then eventually we have the 1 hour, even more time difference between the 4 hour, even more time difference between the daily. That's why the 4 hour, etc., is usually what I want to look at for my fair value areas, etc. But on the 50 minute, even the 1 minute, the 5 minute, we can still have rejections. It's just the way the time frames are in that moment in time, because on the 1 minute, the context essentially is gone a lot faster, meaning we create 5 minute fair value gaps below a 1 minute fair value gap faster than happening on the higher time frame. So you have to react faster. All right, let's see what we want to do. We have this nested fair value area sitting right there as well. Again, a retracement here, ideally not big. And if we do get a retracement, I do still think that we can continue higher right there. But if we're already in a trade, we do not want to get caught up in a consolidation right there, because the trade ID right there, again, was quite high. So it's a shame if we get taken out or even have a big retracement right there to then continue higher, which could happen. All right. Running off of 4 hours sleep, about to see if I can get a few more. Good to see and hear from you, Arjo. Until the next one. Until the next one, my friend. Get your sleep. Get your sleep. Very important. Very important. Get your sleep, my friend. For price in a month for Vergap, how long do you assume there's a resistance at that level? 1 month, 1 candle rejection, or 2 candle rejection? 1 month, 1 candle rejection for me, usually. Tends to be the case. If we need another month right there to reject, then it's usually not a very good sign. With those monthly Vergap gaps, in my experience, we tend to disrespect them a little bit earlier, if that makes sense. Heidenbeck had to lock in for a crude oil trade. Perfect. Perfect. Love to hear that. Love to hear that. Emanchi, if I think I pronounce it right. Emanchi. Yeah, this is looking quite nice. The closer we get to the drawn liquidity, the less retracement we want. So again, if you take a new entry or you have an entry already running, that's something you need to understand right here. The only area that we can currently retrace is, that's exactly what I was talking about. Now we create this fair value area on the 5 minute right there with the 5 minute fair value gap right there, whilst respecting the 1 minute. So we can still retrace, disrespecting the 1 minute, but retrace back to that to then continue higher. But the closer we get to the drawn liquidity, the less I would even expect that fair value area to get traded back into. 4 hour, 50 minutes, unicorn, 1 minute breakaway gap, entries to the highs to get a nice 1 to 2 R. Valid in your opinion? Yeah, that's quite valid. I do like that. Yeah. 15 minutes, 1 hour break, 1 minute breakaway gap. Yeah, that's all right. That's enough confirmation to confirm it through and through, essentially. Yeah. Enigma. Yeah, time to spam Twitter. Time to spam Twitter. I knew it. You see this? You're all losers. I took a trade here. Oh, that's such Twitter. Good morning, Bradley. Good morning. Twitter is such a funny place. Is the GJ valid 15 minute fair value gap ST of the 4 hour fair value gap valid? Let's see. GBJY. Has something changed until now? That's my main question. So here on the 4 hour, we do not follow through of the 4 hour fair value gap, which I would have liked to see. Now we do potentially sweep this low to continue higher. Let's see on the 15 minute. Yeah, 15 minutes for me it's not that convincing just yet. Just purely because we might still be in a consolidation, which I do not like. If we get a 1 hour fair value gap higher right here, we can confirm that through again by going into the 5 minute, into the 15 minute. That's okay for me. That's okay. So I would like to look at that. But it's just purely based on the fact that what we've done here, as in we're not coming off a clear discount rate, so we are using only the 4 hour right there. If we are using only the 4 hour, I would like to have 4 hour order flow. If we get 1 hour confirmation right there, then off the sweep right there, okay, that's extra confirmation. Then 15 minutes as well to continue higher, or 5 minutes, that's okay. I would like that. But just a 15 minute, yeah, I don't necessarily like that. I feel like GJ sweeps swing lows a lot of times. Yeah, that's also true. Very true. Yeah, and especially at this moment in time, of course, where it's constantly sweeping. It's actually a very interesting characteristic that you mentioned, Lei. That could be quite interesting to look at. All right. When I'm bored, I just hop on, get my entertainment, and hop off. So funny. Yeah. What do you see with the eyes? Oh, yeah. Do you still look at the dollar correlation for the commodities actually? Yeah, that's a good question. Not necessarily. I'm not taking it into a heavy account. So from my experience and from actually trading the commodities as well more actively. It's they sort of do their own thing a lot more nowadays. And that's the same with indices. Indices, it's quite tricky, but because you have 1 week where it really takes it into account. Other weeks doesn't really matter. Commodities is, it almost ignores it a lot of the time on what the dollar wants to do. So not really. I don't really look at it anymore. I just trade the commodities almost alone. You too, Zeus. You too, my friend. Have a good rest of the day. See, DAX may be crazy today. At least on the end of the day, I catch sweeping draw liquidity. See, yeah, DAX is an interesting pair. DAX is a it's a very odd pair actually, because DAX on its own, imagine how nice DAX would be just on its own. But with the other indices, like here, for example, we mentioned it just, yeah. If the other indices are just not ready right here to continue lower, then DAX will have a very tough time. A very tough time. It's just so reliant on other factors. Where in London, that's less. That case is a lot less. So here, it's actually quite a nice entry right there on DAX in the morning. But other than that, yeah. Could you check Ethereum? It seems like we will confirm daily bearish order flow, but we are on the weekly value gap. For sure, my friend. Let's see. Ethereum. How? There it is. There it is. I was struggling to spell it. All right. Let's see. So we have this bigger weekly value gap right there. Quite similar to Bitcoin already, but a little bit different. We have this fair value area, which we are currently running into. On the daily, we have indeed some daily order flow that we might be creating here as well. Currently have this sting into it right there. Yeah, this is quite at this moment in time, because now we run into this fair value area right here, which is still an area that we can continue higher off of. I would argue the weekly fair value gap is not that relevant anymore. It's mainly a battle right now between this fair value area right here and whatever fair value gap, daily value gap that we are about to create right there. Because either we're going to continue higher off of this fair value area or continue lower off the fair value gap that we are about to create. So that makes it quite 50-50. Now, if the rejection here fails, for example, right there, it fails, then I would say, well, it's definitely looking interesting for lower prices at this moment in time. If we do not create this initial fair value gap right there, we continue higher already. I do still think we can continue higher. So at this moment in time, it's quite 50-50 in my opinion. EJ and GJ have almost the same price action in 50 minutes, I would argue, and GJ sweeps lows, EJ does not. That's very interesting, Lei. Very interesting. Yeah, I never really pay a lot of attention to GJ or EJ, but it could be a very interesting characteristic actually. Quite interesting. Interesting. I just hopped on charts and indices are whack. ES up, while Nasdaq down. Dollar tanking, yeah, it's a difficult scenario, especially flow traders. For ES, Nasdaq right there is just, yeah, not really interesting right now in my opinion. But again, we do follow through off of that 50-minute value gap. So if we can get the proper confirmation, who knows? And then seeing if we want to sweep this or run this low right there. DAX is quite hard to understand. It's my third month with DAX. It is one of my focus instrument despite of Euro US dollar. Yeah, DAX is definitely very interesting. I've traded DAX as well for a very long time, just DAX alone. My main focus was on London, and in London, DAX is very clean. It's very nice price action, etc. But then when it comes to New York session, all of a sudden, a lot of different factors is what we need to take into account, because now London session, it's like it's DAX time, so DAX can do its own thing, and doesn't really matter what the other indices are doing because they're not volatile enough to do something. When New York session comes, the other indices take the upper hand, and they say, okay, well, if we are going to continue higher, then DAX is just going to follow, essentially. So get crude oil. Ah, there it is. There it is. Nice. A nice delivery, actually. Beautiful delivery right there. Beautiful entry as well that we had right there. That was, well, I would argue that's really one of the nicest trades that we have had in a while on a live session as well. Very nice, very beautiful. So to whoever caught that, I believe Zeus was one of them. Beautiful, nice, well done. Interesting to know if you have felt markets have changed over the past few years and if that's affected the way you trade as well. Well, there's always very small changes, not necessarily. I wouldn't say there's a big change as in all of a sudden something crazy happens, etc., things like that. But there's small changes. For example, we just had a question on, do you still use commodities and compare it with the correlation with the dollar, etc.? I don't really do that anymore. And that could be a very small change which happens over the year that they don't really get correlated anymore, which we could just see. So then slowly we tend to use the dollar less. And those changes, it's not like all of a sudden you're going to miss those changes. No, you change along with the market, if that makes sense. Because whatever the market is showing you now very often, you just add that experience to your overall arsenal. So it just comes very natural, if that makes sense. So has the market changed? In slight things, yes, for sure. 100%. I think Forex has changed a lot. Forex is a lot more consolidating price action as well, which again, then we change just naturally already, if that makes sense. So yes, it has changed in some pieces as well. I would argue Forex, if we're talking about, well, some time ago, Forex was a lot more accurate, was a lot more dependent on kill zones as well, which is not the case anymore, in my opinion, which is why I mainly focus on news days, etc. And we don't have those perfect, well, not very often perfect buy or sell days, if that makes sense, which was a huge thing back in the day as well. The third month of the spring enrollment, I should use my knowledge a bit better than before. Love that. Love that, yeah, for sure, 100%. The dollar just falling right here. Okay. Let's see what we want to do right there. Can we continue lower, or is it a deeper retracement to still continue higher? That's a difficult one. Right here. And my first reaction right here would be, okay, we fill the daily value gap right there. We fill the fair value area to follow through. We don't follow through. Perfect. We can continue lower. But why? Why would we all of a sudden continue lower off of that specific swing high right there to then follow through all the way lower? So is it then not just a consolidation? There's a lot of doubts in my mind regarding that right now. So whenever that's the case, I just want more confirmation. I'm not 100% sure. All right, crude oil, we have delivered towards that drawn liquidity, which we've had for a while now, and we had arguably the cleanest setup right there at the end, which is quite interesting. I also need to actually go break even in my own trade. Let me do that really quick. Perfect. The account doesn't show my knowledge yet. The account always takes it's like you're working in advance, as in you're working for the future. It takes a little bit. It takes a little bit to reflect it. Definitely, but it adds up. It's like a compounding effect. Right now it goes slow. You slowly start to add things up on each other, and then eventually it all of a sudden goes fast. It usually a big thing is, what I notice in traders, is passing a first challenge, for example. When you pass the first challenge, you tend to pass the second challenge quite easily because you sort of get the feeling of it. It's, I don't know if people play a game or something like that, but usually when you struggle with something the first time, or it can be a very small thing, you struggle with it the first time a lot, then all of a sudden you do it and it becomes very natural. The ball starts rolling. You get the hang of it. And it's the same with funded. That's also the next step, is then the same with payouts, because that's also a struggle. Can you get to a payout? And after, once you get the payout, okay, I'm getting the hang of it. And you can keep on doing it and doing it and doing it. Yeah, that's a difficult situation. That is a difficult situation. All right, let's see. Do we have anything interesting right here? Indices for me is still indices, and some of the flow traders might be able to get to a better draw liquidity than me currently, because they are, well, in a flow state for their flow trading plan. But me, it's very 50-50 at this moment in time. I can't really see very clearly what we want to do. Even the 50-minute right here on the ES, we could argue yes, we can continue higher off of that right there, 50-minute value, but still, with Nasdaq going lower, etc., it's quite 50-50. Crude oil delivered, so here, plan of action is simply waiting for a new fair value area, ideally on the 4-hour, to continue higher off of again, and then seeing if we can get a clear area overall again to target. But here, it's taking a step back. It's the first thing to do. New Zealand dollar JPY, not that interesting to me. Australian dollar CHF. Yes, but those close drawn liquidities. But stick entry right there, I would have wanted to take the earlier one. In the meantime, I would like to wait. EU, any of the Forex majors, simply want to wait to see what the dollar wants to do right there. Euro Canadian dollar is not interesting to me. I am tempted to add GBP, JPY right here slowly to the long list, because on the 4-hour, we have the 4-hour value higher right there. We get the potential sweep right there of that low as well. If we can get a 1-hour value up here and get good confirmation of that, stick entry, for example, even 50-minute value, 5-minute value to then continue higher, that could be very interesting. But first step is waiting for the 1-hour value right there. Then seeing what we want to do. That could be quite interesting. Dollar, if we get a 4-hour daily bearish value, would you say then we are about to fill the value area seeking liquidity to the downside? Yes, I would say that. I would say that, because if we do want to continue higher right here, I would want to see, well, 4-hour value is still quite early, but if we do start to create, if we do want to continue higher, then I do want to see it somewhat rejecting right here. Again, keep in mind a consolidation right there, because we might just go back to these type of price action where we just consolidate right there all the time. So keep that in mind as well, that we might just consolidate. But it's not 100% sure. Not 100% sure. Find it difficult right here to see what the dollar wants to do at this moment in time. All right. And on that note, I'm also going